All right, we are live. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to everybody.
Wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Right. So, Alhamdulillah, I'm very happy to be here to introduce the next panel, and this is also a panel in the last half of the last day of the conference. Tomorrow we have a different activity, which is an investor matching program. So Alhamdulillah, it's been a very exciting, dramatic week, I would say, if you can say that about a conference. But Alhamdulillah, I think the response has been incredible. So, I just want to thank everyone, all the participants, the attendees, and of course, all the panelists who are here and the panelists who are also here today. I won't take up too much time. I will pass the mic, but before that, maybe we can have a quick mic test. We can go one round. Dr. Huria, can you say hi?
Hi everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay, very clear. Alhamdulillah. Dr. Shamsia is clear.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Hi,
Good.
All right.
Did you get me?
Mashallah, very clear.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I did. Alhamdulillah.
No, because I've had some
I'll pass
technical problems.
Yeah, well, you're very clear now, which is really, really great. So I'll pass the mic to the moderator for this session so she can kick off the program, inshallah. Madam Noor Farila, please take over.
Thank you very much, Omar. Assalamualaikum and good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this session. For some of our audience, it's actually prime family time at home after work. My name is Farila Abdullah, and I am the Chief Strategy Officer of Bank Islam in Malaysia. We are a bank that upholds Maqasid Syariah and subscribes to value-based intermediation. We have a network of over 140 branches in Malaysia, serving individuals, SMEs, as well as corporates. In recent years, we have witnessed more inclusive development through Islamic Fintechs. Some are more through more efficient and effective mobilization of social finance funds like wakaf, zakat donations, and some through a more targeted understanding of problem statements that are then solved and enabled by technology. So the aim of today's discussion is to bring into perspective gender inclusivity and its influence within Islamic finance that creates this inclusivity and equity. It is therefore my great pleasure to introduce our topic of social impact of Muslim women in the fintech industry. It is an honor for me to be among illustrious panel speakers who between them have over 60 years of experience in Islamic finance, social enterprises, social finance, women education, and many, many more. Let me introduce our first speaker. Dr. Huria Al-Islami is the best national and global Islamic finance activist, proponent award winner for Bank Indonesia, who currently serves as the executive board of Badan Pengelola Kewangan Haji Indonesia and the Islamic Development Bank APIF Supervisory Committee. Recently awarded Anugerah Tokoh Alumni by IIUM, International Islamic University Malaysia. She is also AOEFI Master Trainer, FAA Certified Assessor, IFN Advisory Board Member, Shariah Board Member, and Strategic Advisor of Islamic Fintech Alliance. She has served and contributed her expertise in Islamic banking and finance industry in various areas with 2 decades of experience globally. Our next panelist is the Executive Director and CEO of Pergas Investment Holdings, and she is Dr. Shamsiah Abdul Karim. Pergas Investment Holdings is an affiliate of Pergas, the Religious Teachers and Ulama Association Singapore. Dr. Shamsiah is also an advisor at Financial Sharia Advisory and Consultancy Group and at Ethis Ventures, a fintech company specializing in crowdfunding. Cambridge IFA named her as one of the top 20 most influential women in Islamic finance. The third panelist, Ms. Naira Mahmood, is the Managing Director at Simply Sharia Human Capital, a global platform dedicated to talent development, knowledge, innovation, and thought leadership across Islamic finance industry. She is also a senior associate at Global Women Leaders Strategic Philanthropy, leveraging design, finance, and professional expertise to support women and girls at the margins, and is an emissary for the Responsible Finance and Investment Foundation, or RFI. We are honored to be in your presence. So without further ado, we have an interesting topic, Dr. Huria. What do you think has been the positive social impact created in relation to the contribution and participation of Muslim women in the fintech industry?
Okay. Thank you very much, Sister Nur Farila. If you don't mind, I actually have prepared a short slide here, just very briefly within the allocated time. Inshallah, I'll try to do it as concise and as precise as possible. Yes, when we talk about the woman participation, the impact that Muslim women had made or have made to the Islamic to the fintech industry. Well, let us go back a bit to what basically women are facing in this area, in this particular area. Yeah, there are of course always two sides of the same coin. We are lucky that technology is blind, but unfortunate. Although the fintech actually remains in the virtual world, but when it comes to our actual business, we must still face the real world. And it is a public secret that everyone knows. Most the entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs face when it comes to trying to establish themselves in the business, be it fintech and otherwise, we do face challenges in terms of access to financing. I would say a bigger challenge that the opposite gender would face. And on the second aspect, we are lucky that later generation, they are less gender biased. So that's the positive aspect of the coin. But on the other side of the coin, unfortunately, decision makers are mostly still from the earlier generation, and they still have the tendency of gender bias. So the problem is that it's not resolved yet. But luckily, this is the positive aspect of women. Well, it is very well known that for us women to be wherever we are, we have to work harder, we have to learn faster, we have to adapt quicker. And therefore, given whatever circumstances, usually we are more resilient compared to our fellow opposite gender in the same area. So when the pandemic came, and we are still actually facing the situation that at the moment everyone is actually affected by the pandemic all over the world. Well, it's a struggle for everybody. I'm not saying it's less struggle for women, but well, we are used to it. So we still have to struggle, but we are not taking the impact as dramatic as it might be by the opposite gender. But out of all this, we still see the good side, the good positive effect of the pandemic itself, because now everyone is accepting the new normal, and fintech has become part of the new normal. Because only yesterday, when I was asked to actually share my view with the alumni of IIUM, I did mention that when we talk about Indonesia, I took Indonesia as an example. In Indonesia, they have a long plan. They planned all long ago to introduce fintech, to introduce technology in the area of education. But thanks to the pandemic, eventually, it took them years and with very little uptake. But the pandemic actually forced everybody to accept it. Although, despite that, well, now fintech has become part of the new normal, but the reality is Indonesia and other developing countries still face challenges because, first of all, when it comes to fintech, we are having the limitation in terms of literacy access, and also we have limited and scarce access to the technology, and of course, the aspect of consumer protection is still very lacking. Why I'm highlighting all that? There is very much to highlight where I'm going to address your question just now, Miss Sister Nur Farila, because you see, the truth is, survey indicated when it comes to Islamic fintech, 26% of the founders are female. So amazing. Imagine when it comes to Islamic fintech, 1 of 4 founders are Muslim women. Yeah. As opposed to conventional fintech, where the number for the female founders is still slightly below. Of course, when it comes to the cumulative number, they are still more. But in terms of aggregate is only 17% for the conventional fintech. And the interesting part, of course, Islamic fintech, as opposed to conventional fintech, is rising in Southeast Asia. And it is quite interesting. We have the people representing from Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia here as the speakers. Now, why I highlighted the earlier point just now? Because when it comes to fintech, the impact that the woman had made to this particular area, when we talk from the perspective of those developed countries, people will be talking about numbers, people will be talking about what has been done, and the challenge is very much about penetrating the market. But when we talk from the viewpoint where I'm sitting right now, the country where I am at the moment, the challenge will be completely different because people are not familiar with fintech yet. Yeah. This, of course, the pandemic actually forced them to accept, like it or not, they still have to deal with the fintech at the moment. But then the fact that there is a challenge of literacy, access to technology, all these are still lacking, and therefore the impact that women have to give more in this country, in Indonesia and developing countries, is very much concentrating on this area. You would see there are more teachers, educators, professionals who are focusing on this, because the challenge here is still trying to get people to accept. And the pandemic forced them to accept. Still, we still have the challenge. We are still facing the challenge that we need to get them to understand what is fintech. Because of the pandemic, it's true that we witnessed the rising of 20 to 30% of the people who are actually resorting to fintech in Indonesia, for example. But then most of them, they didn't even know what they're doing. And some of them, they cannot even differentiate, is Islamic or not Islamic. For example, they thought everything that they can borrow from the internet is actually Sharia compliant, because they thought it's just borrowing money, not realizing what they're doing. Actually, they're resorting to the practice of riba. So all these little matters that most academicians, professional educators, the industry players may be thinking as a small matter, it's a big issue, especially when it comes to Islamic fintech, because for a while we take it for granted. Most of those services offered in the virtual realm mostly Sharia compliant, and therefore by default most in fintech are actually Islamic fintech. But truth is, now that we are faced by the reality, it is far from that. We need to educate more. These are the impact where the women are actually focusing here in Indonesia. We need to actually educate the people. We need to actually make them to realize what fintech really is, how to differentiate between Islamic fintech and non-Islamic fintech. And Indonesia being a country with the most Muslim population, they need to actually appreciate that there are offers out there, especially in East Asia. We are seeing Islamic fintech rising in Southeast Asia. So choose Sharia compliant technology. Use Sharia compliant services, offerings, as opposed to any offering just because it is available online. So that's basically my response to your question just now, Sister Nurfarila. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Huria. I think that's a very interesting statistics that you showed. 1 in 4 of the founders of Islamic fintech, women. And I'm actually curious to know what the number is in Malaysia. For sure, in our work in Bank Islam, as we also, one of our objectives is to be the leading bank in social finance, and we look for change makers. Definitely, the change makers that have come to us are more gender inclusive, in the sense that the problem statements that appear are the ones that would elevate the livelihood of girls. Girls at the margins of students. So that's really good to know. Segueing to Ms. Naira, do you think that, is there a greater moral dimension or greater purpose in the work done by Muslim women in fintech? How have their motivations driven positive change?
Sister Naira, you are muted. I think you need to unmute first. We cannot hear you, sister. You need to turn off. Yeah, yes, turn
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Sorry. No, because it automatically went to mute. So, right. Assalamu alaikum. It's lovely to meet you all. That's there's a lot of things in that one question, so I'll kind of try to unpack it. In terms of a greater moral dimension, I think, generally speaking, if we're talking about Islamic fintech and we're talking about fintech for good, I think that moral dimension is the underlying kind of principles and values of Islamic fintech, which applies to all, whether it's men or women. In terms of the purpose, I think a greater purpose is due to greater obstacles and challenges, which Dr. Huraya has very eloquently mentioned. I think women in this space and women generally across Islamic finance and Muslim women have multiple barriers, whether it's social, cultural, network, access to finance, access to transport. It's just, there's a multitude of things around them. And that's the backdrop which kind of forces them, I think, to find that greater purpose, because they see problems within their communities, within their families, and they think community-wise. A lot of civil community leaders tend to be women. They're in the middle of it. They see all these problems, so they look for solutions. It's no surprise that you've got 1 in 3 Arab startups which are led or founded by women. It's because they're against this backdrop, so they've had to leverage technology. And technology, you're right, is a great leveler, but the gatekeepers are still, it's very kind of male dominated. So there are those kind of issues. In terms of, I suppose, when you think about positive change, I can give you an example of something that I think is a wonderful kind of initiative. And now it's an organization that was set up in Pakistan, which is Doctors, which is DOCT capital HERS. And it was set up by a female doctor who took time out of work because she had a baby and she had a family. So she had to take care of her family kind of environment and her children. So, but she had this great skill. She was a doctor. She, life-saving skills. So she looked towards technology and she set up an online platform which not only brought in other female doctors that were in the same position, which allowed financial inclusion for them, but also allowed to serve patients who were underserved, who didn't have the access. So there are these wonderful positive changes, and the purpose. I think women are purpose-driven. They just generally don't just think about themselves. They think about the wider kind of communities around them. Microfinance is another example of that. When women take out loans, they tend to pay them back, but it's loans that will help the wider community. It's not just about them. So I hope that kind of covers the moral and purpose dimension of that.
Thank you for that, Ms. Naira. Moving on to Dr. Shamsia, what else do you think can be done to create ecosystems or platforms that are able to encourage more Muslim women and also support them in building inclusivity and equity, or in starting even more fintechs? Dr. Shamsia, you're on mute. You have to unmute.
I think we are losing her. She doesn't seem to move at all.
I couldn't unmute. I think it's
okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Forgot about that, because they unmute us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Nofarila. Yes. I just want to start with this statement by a friend shared with me, stated by Ibn Qayyim. Women, they are one half of society, which give birth to the other half. So it is as if they are the entire society. So women is very important. And with fintech, when fintech started, and you see with the COVID situation, with the pandemic situation, we see that there's a silver lining actually for women who wanted to start. We can see a lot of entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs who have started home base, using fintech technology and using the internet and all the e-commerce technology to start their own businesses and so on. So it is a silver lining for women, especially because in these days and age, you're right, Naira, just now you mentioned about it's a leveler. With technology, with fintech technology, it becomes a leveler. So women's opportunity in this area has actually increased, it has heightened. So I think very important is the mindset, not on the other gender, meaning the man, but also on the woman itself. I think the background, the cultural background, the mindset, the mobility of the mind to shift towards, this. They do not have to be fearful of the areas that they are going into. So it has to shift because if you look at even the statistic shows, women in finance already not many. If you look at the banking sector, and then what more in technology. So it has been traditionally a male-dominated area. So what I see that is very important is first is culture to the women themselves, actually, not to be afraid of going into this area. And I just had my son actually went through a training on data scientists, and I asked him, how many are there women in your class? And he said it's about 1/3. So it's shifting. It's shifting. Alhamdulillah, we can see that the female and women are more interested in this area. And then with the environment that fintech is creating, you are able to work from home. You are able to do a lot of the things that maybe becomes a very huge social barrier for women to actually go into such area. And you can see like banking, they spend many hours. They have to clock in many hours. They have to, it's a bit a little bit difficult for them to juggle work and and to serve, their responsibility as a woman, as a mother, as a wife. So I think with it is a move which is very encouraging. And I think there's take it on a positive note, that these are things that has actually paved the way for women to be more inclusive, because I think women, and if you look at and it doesn't make sense, because in business you have to be inclusive, you have to have diversity. If you are already a male dominated, let's say, company, and then in terms of marketing, in terms of your business, you will not be able to tap the way a woman thinks, the way women consume, in terms of marketing and so forth. So diversity is very important, I think. And I think most companies, most businesses are saying this, and they see the value of women in their business and setup. Yeah.
How just now, Dr. Huria, you showed the slide that said that yes, technology is blind and it is a great leveler, but the challenge faced by women in general and Muslim women are still there because the gatekeepers may not understand or may not empathize with the different angle and different lens, right? That women face. What other avenues or mechanism do you think that women have to create more levelers? So technology is one. Are there others that can
Yes.
be created, built?
Sure. Thank you very much, Sister Norfarila. And I like when Sister Naira coined the word the gatekeeper, because yes, that's what happening. That's very true. So let me start with, since Dr. Shamsia has given the emphasis of the importance of women. I'm sure everyone is aware. When someone asks whom you should respect, the Prophet has answered, your mother. Then whom? Your mother. Ummuk, and ummuk 3 times. Then only your father. So if we go by that, I mean, I like the 1%, the whole percentage that given by Dr. Shamsia. But even if we will go by this, it's the 3/4, which is. But now, going back to your question, Sister Nurfalila. Before addressing that, let me share a little bit of the story of struggle in Indonesia because of the pandemic, especially. We realized quite late. And I mean, if we want to go about gender, you know whom to blame. It's not women, yeah. When we realize it, and we realize that this is pandemic, we have to take it seriously. Anyway, it's a bit too late. Then by the time we realize there are many victims have fallen, and the impact is not only about the human life. Of course, that's the greatest loss, but also impacting the economy, where many men had been laid off from their jobs. And what is interesting, and we are still witnessing this as of today, is the wives, those who have seen as, mere homemakers. These are the real saviors, the heroes of the pandemic, because they actually, rose. They played their role, and they actually they saved their family. They did whatever they could, even resorting. I did mention about the example. They borrowed money from the whatever fintech company online. Sometimes they couldn't even differentiate whether or not what they did is Sharia compliant. That's another story for another day. We need to discuss, because we really need to actually enlighten them on that. But this story of struggle really shows that, well, the level itself that we had already today is not enough. They are despite the story of struggle, but it shows how resilient women are. And in fact, it could be better off, and they could actually utilize the technology to make better impact to the whole society, if only there is empowerment. And this empowerment could be from the fellow women and fellow men who realize, that at the end of the day, you have, like in Indonesia, demography shows actually half of the workforce today is female. So if they want to ignore this, they're losing half of the workforce. This is a great loss. So they have to accept that, like it or not, those at the age of activity, those who can really contribute to society, at the moment, Indonesia stood at the half of the population. And therefore, it's either you deploy this or you ignore it, but at your cost, at your loss. So yes, one thing is about empowerment. The other thing, government support. We do need government support, and this is still lacking. Like in Indonesia, we do have this big agenda about 2045. Having the enhance of the human resources or the people capacities in Indonesia. But unfortunately, the agenda for women is very limited, and is focusing very much about the woman ability to reproduce. Although Dr. Shamsia said, like women, we actually give birth to half, but that's not the only thing we can do. Not only just giving birth, right? We can do much more. You see, the survey has already proven 1/4 of the founder of Islamic Fintech are actually women. So we can do more, but we need empowerment, because you see, in Indonesia, we have witnessed the bad story, the good story. We have Fintech founded by women, and it is very successful today. It has gone global. But on the other hand, we have so many startups that had the failed story. It's not that the idea wasn't good. It's not that because they didn't know what they are doing. But in reality, now it is a big jungle out there. It's still heavily unregulated. Therefore, first of all, of course, we need regulation. We need the consumer protection to be put in place. But more importantly, we need empowerment. We need the support from the government, not only for those who are bankable, but also for those women who have actually creative ideas, who have all this, what it takes for them to succeed. And they could have succeeded if only they were given the empowerment, they were given the support, they were given those facilities, they would have enabled them to actually materialize their objective. But this is not happening yet, and this is now like buried even further down because of the pandemic. Like every priority has gone on to, okay, just tackle the pandemic issue first. But then, you know, on the other side of the coin, we have to realize the pandemic has proven we cannot live entirely based on the traditional way of life. Fintech has become part of it. So if you want to actually live better in the given situation, you need to actually improve your virtual realm. You need to actually improve the technology. We have to actually embrace more ideas about fintech, and women can give you a lot on these areas. They can contribute. Give them the chance. Give them empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Huria. At this juncture, I would like to invite questions actually from the floor, and you can do that by typing your question in the control panel in the Q&A. So I do invite questions that you'd like to pose to the panelists. Okay, actually building on what Dr. Huria, you mentioned just now with regards to the challenges. In Malaysia today, as part of my mandate in my role as the Chief Strategy Officer, we are working with a lot of fintechs. And there are different levels of maturity and of advancement of the fintech. Some of them are still at maybe, you know, problem statement level. Some of them are actually quite advanced in already having a product out there. But the general, and this applies to all, the generalization that I see here is actually for a fintech to be successful, it takes, I can equate it to, it takes a village to raise a child. So it does take a village to nurture a fintech. Now, my question that maybe I can pose to Dr. Shamsia is that, do you think that fintechs or Islamic fintechs that are founded by women should be given special treatment by the government agencies or by the private equity or by any of these stakeholders that can nurture them?
Okay, yeah. We always believe in meritocracy, right? We always believe in meritocracy, but meritocracy is also creating meritocracy is not when it is a level playing field. Meritocracy is you have to help a particular, you know, group if you want it to be successful, if you want them to be, you know, at a certain level. So I do agree if the government sees that, you know, that they wanted women to be to have more inclusivity in terms of the fintech areas, and then there are some carrots, some motivation for them to go into this area. And they see it not only for the fact that they want women for the sake of women, but it is also for the country. It is also for the country economies and so on. I think they are not only looking at gender for the sake of gender, but I think it is to actually encourage the whole economy, because women is also, like I mentioned in my opening speech, they are very important in the society, making a lot of decision making. As you know, as a wife, as a mother, as you know, women are making lots and lots of decision making, and if for them to exclude them in the entire, you know, community or fintech community, that will be a disaster for the system. So I do agree in some sort of to you know to encourage women to be to take up this fintech role. Yeah.
Can I just add? I agree with Dr. Shamsa. What I would say is meritocracy isn't working. I think I would kind of go as far as that. And we talk about women and equality. I think it's women and equity as well, because it's based on what female fintech founders are going through. So this is why you do need government intervention. You do need policies that will support women and support that ecosystem, because that ecosystem is very fragile as it is. So I just wanted to add that to that, because I think there is absolutely a need for some sort of government support, especially in hubs where we know this is growing, where fintech is growing, Malaysia, Indonesia. Let the government kind of step in and just be a support mechanism rather than, kind of doing favors, because there are plenty of women out there with amazing ideas who just don't get their foot through the door. So that's it, really.
If you can stay on there, Ms. Naira, the question that I have from Burhan Ali is, what are the immediate strategies that can be implemented to empower women within the fintech industry?
Well, government kind of coming in and sort of supporting that ecosystem, I think, is very important. Also, what I don't, I see it maybe in the conventional space, in the conventional fintech. In the UK, there are organizations which are kind of band together and push the agenda of diversity. We've got a group in London which is called Innovate Finance, which is a member organization for fintechs. But they're big, they really push, they've got a diversity lead. I don't see that happening, or I haven't seen it happening within Islamic fintech, where we have a hub for women, for female founders, where they can find the support. It's not just financial, but it's actually getting the messaging out. It's actually listening to them and identifying what their problems are and what they need within that ecosystem. And this is where companies, I find this, we've talked about Islamic banking, Islamic finance, which is my kind of full-time space that I work in. To come up with a strategy, you need to identify what the problems are for women within your organizations. And this kind of falls again into culture. I think all of you have kind of mentioned this. The culture needs to shift. CEOs, which are the people right at the top of the food chain, shareholders, need to be moving the culture towards female empowerment, towards equity for women, which is, I don't believe for 1 minute they're not interested in diversity. I think they are, but it's not a priority list. It's not sort of up there. So those are kind of some of the things that I think we need to strategize with, really. That was the question, right? Yeah. And the other thing I would love to see is data. We lack data. We talk about all these problems in terms of whether it's in Islamic finance as a whole, as a space, or it's gender diversity or women within fintech. This figure, I think it's a great figure that you had, about 26% of fintechs are female-led. And I came across that survey, and I think it was 180 companies. But they didn't name any of the female founders of the companies. And this is where we need a breakdown, where we can actually look at those figures and measure them and evaluate them and then report on them and continue to do that. Because once we can kind of find explanations for some of the issues that we're dealing with, we can come up with some of the solutions. So I think those are some of the areas that I'd love to see us work on.
Yeah, I mean, data is really important, and I think measuring the social impact attributed by the involvement of women, I don't know whether that figure or that research has been done, but Dr. Huria, do you think that's important to actually measure the social impact attributable to the contribution of participation of women?
Yes.
In fintech?
Yes, I always believe data are very important. Of course, results are far more important, but then sometimes you need data in order to achieve the plan that you try to implement to get the result. So, for example, why I did mention about now the workforce in Indonesia in terms of gender stands at 50-50. Based on this data, we have a solid argument as to why they should not ignore women as a in workforce. So when we have data, like it or not, especially when we talk about technology, by default people will be thinking, oh, this is the domain of men. So by having data, when we measure that the women exist, they contributed, they made impact, this data could actually prove them wrong. But more importantly, it's not only about proving them wrong, but when we have this periodical data measurement, we can see how the improvement, how the progress is going, and what are the factors that actually facilitate this growth. And from there, we could also assess what are the areas of weaknesses, the gaps, the the areas that we need to address better, so that the growth could be accelerated and all that. So yes, of course, data are very important, because at the end of the day, if it is just my view, your view, there's no data supporting it, of course we are always at the losing end. But when we have data, nobody can actually dispute that, as long as, of course, the survey is actually conducted in a responsible manner.
I think we have time for one last question. This is from Leona. What are some of the commonalities observed when it comes to Islamic women, Muslim women, trying to break into the fintech scene? So perhaps the commonalities with regards to the positive attributes, or it could also be commonalities with regards to challenges. Maybe Dr. Shamsia, would you like to take that question?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the questions. Especially when I think I would say that when fintech comes in, when a lot of these things are already online, and a lot of services, and the industry has moved, it has become better. Because if you look at the time that I have to go through, because I was always in the Sharia line. I was from the Islamic Religious Council, and at that time I was the only woman Muslim uh, in the management role. And then it is even more difficult as a Muslimah, as a woman, to be in the fatwa committee, and to be in the Sharia committee, and to lead on the Sharia matters, because you have to face with many of the, for example, you have to go to the mosque, and it is there's one time there is there is a opening bank of a new product, of a new finance product, and it was launched in the mosque during the Friday prayers. So as women, we are not actually allowed to to be out there in front of the mimbar and so on. So it becomes a bit awkward. A lot of awkwardness, a lot of things that we are unable to be at the front, because of it is the man domain, it is the man's area. So, but with fintech, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Nothing is, to me, there's nothing to stop you from actually going into this area. But definitely, there's two side of the coin, like you mentioned. The person itself, that means you yourself, has to have that shift in the cultural mindset, that do not be afraid of the man out there, even if it's a male dominated industry. But the men as well, I'm not sure whether like Naira rightly mentioned, sometimes it is a bit difficult, because they don't actually think like the woman. So there are sometimes barriers, there are sometimes things that they don't think that this may affect the woman, but it does when it comes to certain decision, when it comes to certain matters. For example, we have to be on they mentioned you have to be on the table to actually make policy changes. So things like on inheritance matters, I've made some changes on some of the administration of Muslim Law Act back in Singapore, where they mentioned that only male can be an administrator. So why not female? You know, why not female? So because nobody brings it up, nobody is on the table to actually argue on things. So it is very important that we have to include ourselves and be brave and make that changes. And I call upon all the women to do that, to have that your own, you know, in you to actually pave through the ways and be that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shamsia. I believe our time is up, but I think some of the key takeaways from this discussion, it's been very enlightening and elevating. I like that we should strive for equity, right? Not just equality. And in most cases, meritocracy has not worked. And that I think we are all in agreement and in alignment that women bring in whatever that they undertake, have a sense of the purpose is bigger. There's a greater purpose, and the fact that, you know, we give birth to the other half of the population. So therefore, thank you very much for your wisdom and for the points that you have brought up today. I will then hand this over to, is it Omar or is it to Mansi?
Yeah, hand it over to Mansi.
Okay, Mansi. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much for this, amazing panel. I personally always try to, have this discussion and highlight the importance of female entrepreneurs or female leaders within the halal economy. I think it's been fascinating, the fact that I have been visiting Malaysia so many times and seeing that, seeing the female representation of women in Malaysia, really, compared to other countries, I think it's really great. For any entity, you personally, wherever I go and meet any having meetings, I think there has to be at least 2 female representation in a meeting, and this was something that I haven't seen, for example, in Dubai. So being living there, it was really, I think Malaysia, within the halal economy or beyond, perhaps, I think Malaysia has really, has really good, it gave me good impression about that. The second point is, I think if we go back to the roots, and I see a lot of people, and I hope you don't consider me hijacking this panel, but just want to give my feedback. Back to the roots, I think everybody's talking about men empowering women, but we forgot that when you go back to the roots, I think it's a woman empowering men. And when you look at Khadija radiallahu anha, how she empowered a man, and she was the most prominent businesswoman in Arabia.
Yeah.
She entrusted a man. She empowered him, and he was younger than her. She entrusted him, and that time every agent or every man would have loved to work for this businesswoman, Khadija radiallahu anha. So she did not choose anyone. She chose Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he was younger than her. But she entrusted him. She empowered him. She entrusted her. She trusted him with her wealth, with her business, and so on and so forth. So I think really it's about female actually empowering men, but for men to understand that in order for you to take such a decision and to to review this, you have to understand that it's actually women empowering men, right? And my personal experience with Elmangos, for example, with this project or any of the projects that we have been doing so far, I really think female are super dedicated compared to men. Okay, look at it in different angles. There are some tasks that I personally wouldn't really do, and I'm committed to certain timing. But our amazing female colleagues, they would just go beyond the expectation. And honestly, me personally, I would really be impressed. So I think women are super dedicated. You can't really compare women to men. I think it's unfair to women to compare them to men. I think the scale is going to be taking the side of female. That's what I personally believe, and I think. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for this amazing panel. And one of the questions that someone was suggesting to create, why don't we create an Islamic VC or a group of angel investors consisting of Muslim women to support initiatives from women within the fintech area. And I think maybe this is something that our esteemed panelists could consider and maybe follow up to the discussion, further, inshallah. So thank you so much once again. And we move to the next panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
So we move to the next panel. I'd like to introduce our guest for the last and final panel of today, which is leveraging blockchain for impact and green sukuk. We have Mr. Farhan Magdid from Fluxys UAE. We have Dr. Nida Khan, who's the Chief Technology Officer of One Agrix based in Belgium. And we have Ella Kiang, who's the manager of the Bitcoin Association in Singapore. We would love to, they will be discussing, it's going to be a fireside chat about what are the factors affecting the implementation of blockchain to become a viable option for green sukuk issuance. With that, please, I'll leave this panel to the moderator, Ella Kiang. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this fireside chat about leveraging blockchain for impact finance and green sukuk. My name is Ella Chang. I'm the Southeast Asia manager at Bitcoin Association. We are a nonprofit industry association that works to advance the adoption of Bitcoin SV blockchain as the data and value infrastructure for global commerce. So before working full-time in the blockchain space, I also personally spent a few years at China Development Bank, working as a financier for some of the infrastructure projects that include industrial scale solar power plants. So personally, I'm very interested in the topic that we're going to discuss today. So we really have the pleasure to be joined by two experts and also practitioners in both the blockchain architecture and Islamic finance space. Our first speaker is Dr. Nida Khan, CTO at One Agrix. The company is a B2B e-commerce platform that leverages blockchain for food traceability. And prior to One Agrix, Dr. Khan was working as a doctoral researcher in the Interdisciplinary Center for Security, Reliability, and Trust at University of Luxembourg. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Khan. Our next speaker joining us from Dubai is Mr. Farhan Magdid, founder and CEO at Fluxys. Mr. Magdid used to work as a blockchain architecture solution provider for the Islamic finance and banking industry. He has years of on-hand experience of leading technical and research team to deploy blockchain technology for the development of Islamic capital market, crowdfunding, investment, and socio-economic development. Thanks very much for joining us, Mr. Magdid.
Thank you so much.
So the worlds of impact investing and Islamic finance are really growing rapidly over the past few years. According to a recent report issued by the CFA Institute, the estimated size of the global assets of impact investing have already exceeded $30 trillion US. And for Islamic finance, it has exceeded $2 trillion US. And also one subset of Islamic impact investing, green sukuk, is gaining more and more traction over the years as issuers are looking for alternative source of Islamic financing to fund green infrastructure projects. And blockchain has been a buzzword that a lot of people have heard about nowadays. But in its essence, it really is, immutable time order records that not an individual or a single entity or company can change or alter. It's the single source of truth. So today we're really going to discuss how blockchain technology can be leveraged to address some of the challenges or issues that Islamic impact financing and green sukuk are facing nowadays. So with today's discussion, we're going to do it in two parts. The first part, we're going to discuss with Dr. Khan about blockchain applications in the broader Islamic impact finance context. And then the second half, we're going to narrow down to one specific use case, that is green sukuk. And we're going to have the discussion with Mr. Madid. So I know, Dr. Khan, you've been working on several research projects that are related to the use of blockchain in social finance, decentralized finance, and micropayments donation. Can you give us an overview of where do you see the value propositions of blockchain technology in the context of Islamic impact finance?
Thank you, Ella. A warm welcome to all of you. I think a very good way to address this question would be to look at some of the challenges that are present in impact finance as of now, and see how really blockchain can help to resolve those challenges. For example, when you consider impact finance, the data in that domain is really not shareable. We talk about impact metrics, but the data related to it is not reliable. Then we talk about the SDG categories being targeted, but again, the data is not consistent. So what can be done is that we can use the blockchain platform to record this data. And as you already mentioned about the immutability characteristic of blockchain, this will help in preservation of the data integrity. And also you can verify the source. So you will have verifiable data at your hand. Then the second is that you need to have some kind of mechanism to measure the social and the environmental impact. Now, again, the blockchain platform can be used to generate impact tokens, which can help in the quantification of this impact. Then the third challenge that I can think of is that how do you really assure that there is transparency? And how do you bring about accountability in an impact financial venture? So basically, again, blockchain can prove to be very beneficial here. As all of us know that a public blockchain has all the transactions which can be read by all. So it is transparent. When you talk about a private blockchain platform, then you can think in terms of providing access to the auditing body or the body which is concerned with having a look into the transactions that are taking place. So maybe the stakeholders or the investors. And so this provides transparency. When you talk about accountability, so what you can do is that you can use a smart contract and you can have your project divided into certain different milestones which need to be achieved. And when you talk about these milestones, let's assume that a certain milestone has been achieved. So the smart contract, through the smart contract, you can trigger an event notifying the stakeholders or the investors that this milestone has been achieved. And the investors can see the entire trail of data that is backing this certain milestone on the blockchain platform. Then again, no discussion on blockchain would be complete without a discussion on cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrencies, by virtue of their nature, are extremely divisible into small subunits, which is not possible with fiat currency. And this extreme divisibility of cryptocurrency lends it to be useful for blockchain-based micropayments, which can help in nanofinance, poverty alleviation, and also in socioeconomic benefit and financial inclusion. So I happened to visit a talk by Bill Gates in which he gathered some data from a book by Rosling. And he mentioned that the world can be divided basically into 4 different levels. So we have level 1 with people living under $2 a day, approximately 1 billion people. Then we have level 2 with people living between $2 and $8 a day, that is 3 billion people. Then level 3 with between $8 and $32 a day. And then level 4, which is above $32 a day. So when you focus on level 1 and level 2, which is approximately 4 billion people, you have between $2 and $8, and these people do not have access to financial services. Now, blockchain can be used to create blockchain-based wallets. And because you know that micropayments are feasible, so you can come up with very innovative business models that can help in financial inclusion and in poverty alleviation.
Thanks for the very great answers. And you touched several different points in terms of the potential use case of blockchain, of impact financing, that involve the investment perspective and also kind of the fundamental infrastructure, such as the wallet aspect with micropayments that can have a broader access to the unbanked or underbanked population. Do you have, can you share with us some use cases or examples that you have involved with in the past to showcase, what are the problems and how are you designing a blockchain-based solution to address those problems?
So basically, I have been involved in quite a few of those, and I don't think we have so much time for me to talk about all of them, but I'll pick up the most recent one on which I'm working with OneAgrix. So basically, in OneAgrix, you can conceive it as a digital marketplace. We bring together suppliers and buyers, and we ensure that whatever the buyer is buying is really authentic. So if a supplier claims that he's giving a halal food to the buyer, then we have the certificate for the halal supplier uploaded on Ethereum. But how do you really ensure that the buyer is really receiving the halal product? We have the certification body, okay, fine, we have the certificate uploaded. But what happens when he transports this halal product? It goes through logistics, and something happens during logistics. There's cross-contamination. I'm sorry, I received a survey in between. So there's it was by Elmangos, I think. So there's cross-contamination, maybe some other contaminant like pork or something happens to become a part of this halal chicken. And when the buyer receives it, he's using it in the belief that this is purely a halal product, whereas it might not be. So what we have come up with is a kind of mechanism called a DNA detection kit. So you can use this DNA detection kit to detect whether the sample of chicken that you have received has pork present or not. So what we encourage the supplier and the buyer to do is to use these DNA detection kits. And we have provided, we are working on providing a mobile app whereby they can record this data through the mobile app and a smart contract on the blockchain platform, where they get the results of the DNA detection kit telling them whether some contaminant is present or not. So in order to incentivize the supplier and the buyer, because normally they would do it for themselves, but they would hesitate from recording this data on the blockchain platform. So we have come up with something known as AgriCoin, which is an impact token. So for every data that the supplier records, we give him an impact token. And this is equivalent to, let's say, $1 of fiat currency. And this can be redeemed by the supplier and the buyer later on in the future transactions with OneAgrix. So basically what we have done through this mechanism is that we are encouraging them to record the data. They are treating the data as an asset. And what the halal economy will benefit from is a large amount of data, which they can use to design not just the future model of OneAgrix, but other like marketplaces or organizations that come up in the halal economy.
Is the token pegged to any fiat currencies, or it's traded based on the market value?
It's still in the conception stage, but it will be a stable coin, so it will be tradable and spendable. But we would prefer to restrict its use to our own platform of OneAgrix.
Got it. Yeah, that's a really good example of using blockchain's traceability and smart contract capability to record facts on the chain and know what's going on in the every step of the value chain. I'm curious to understand, since when enterprises are looking at blockchain solutions, the first question that a lot of people ask first is, you have the public blockchains such as, the Ethereum, the Bitcoin SV blockchain, and others, and then you have those permissioned private distributed ledger technology. In your use case, like which one do you guys use, and what are the considerations that you guys putting to make that decision?
So basically, for the certificates, we use Ethereum blockchain because we are using it just as a database. But when we talk about the impact token, we would go for a permission blockchain platform. A very good way to understand this is to really delve deeper into what these blockchain platforms offer to you. So we can't in general say, okay, for a particular use case, it will always be the public blockchain, or for a particular use case, it will always be the private one. We have to look at the goals. What are the goals the organization wants to target? Which country is the solution being provided to? So for example, if you are in the European Union and you want to build a solution here, then you need to ensure to data privacy. And when you talk about the public blockchain, this is not possible. So it will not be compliant to the GDPR law. So you have to really look into these aspects. Then again, you have to look into at what stage of the project is. Like, for example, is it a pilot testing case? Is it simply an R&D one? So you'll go for the public blockchain. Otherwise, when you talk about banks and normal supply chain companies, then they would prefer a permission ledger. So basically, the public blockchain you have, as all of us know, it's open to everybody, it's permissionless, anybody can join. But at the same time, this makes it comparatively much slower. The throughput is less when compared to the private blockchain platform. The private blockchain platform is comparatively more centralized, but again, you can have it nearly comparable to the existing legacy systems by ensuring a security layer, by allowing only entities that are permitted to participate in the blockchain platform to be there. Then you can have restricted read-write access, not allowing everybody to read the data. So you really have to look at the benefits that you are looking forward to be able to choose the blockchain platform you want to choose.
Thanks for sharing with us, Dr. Khan. I think it's about time for us to move on to the second section to talk about green sukuk.
Sure.
So for those who are not familiar with the concept of green sukuk, it's a Sharia compliance certificate that represents ownership of assets. And for green sukuk, those instruments are used to finance renewable energy or other environmental friendly assets. And it's been gaining quite some traction over the recent years. And I know Mr. Magid has personally been, doing a lot of research and deployment of coming up a blockchain-based solution on green sukuk. So very interested in hearing your perspective. So first, before we get into the green sukuk nitty-gritties itself, let's take a step back because sukuk is a type of asset-based security. And can you talk a bit about the concept of tokenization of asset-backed security? What are the roles of blockchain application in this transformation of Islamic asset market into a digital form on blockchain?
Just remove my headphone because I think my voice is much clearer here. So basically, when Doctor has covered well about the blockchain, and as we know, blockchain is a consistent of few applications. So one of the major applications that we are talking about is a smart contract. Interestingly, smart contract has just started in 2017. And when we mention about smart contract, it's only something about a standardization, nothing much. So earlier, when we used to talk about the blockchain, is all about cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange. So crypto considered as a medium of exchange, which is an application underlined by the blockchain. So what happened during early time, there was no any chances for integration with any business cases. So only back in 2017 again, when smart contract has been issued or has been launched by Ethereum from Ethereum platform, then the chances of the business integration has increased. So when we mention about security token or smart contract, so let's not miss much. So when we talk about token on the blockchain, is a smart contract. So the token has a certain address, which is like a range of code running on the blockchain, is auto self-generated. So that's all the description about the token, which is quite different than the crypto. And when we mention about Sukuk, interestingly, Sukuk is also a structure. When you look at the scientists and all those scholars, they mention about the Sukuk, they call it Sukuk structuring. So without Sukuk structure, they will not be able to issue any Sukuk which is backed with the asset. So now here we have a structure. Number two, we always make a differentiation between the operation side of the Sukuk and also the asset side of the Sukuk. In between, they need to have, and the purpose for that one actually, they need to have a security. So that's the attribute of the Sukuk. And when this security is in the place, that's where the investors will gain the trust of this Sukuk platform to invest in any kind of the Islamic capital market. So that's where the proper infrastructure of the Sukuk. When we compare that one again with the smart contract, it doesn't show any differences. In the smart contract, we have the similar case. We are issuing a security token, or let's put it in a way, we are securitizing the real asset market in a form of contract, which is more automated, and it is open for the entire public. So meaning to say everyone can participate using this kind of platform to invest in any certain capital. So that's where, when we use the concept of the smart contract and the security token, there is a quite a lot of debates basically going on nowadays in the market when we talk about the Sharia compliant Sukuk or Sharia compliant smart Sukuk, which is based on the blockchain. So honestly, when I did deep research about Sukuk back in 2018, I come out with the principle of the Sukuk chain. So the whole aim to come out with a standardization. I wanted to make it a proper standard, or an only standard for the Sukuk industry. And when we mention about Sukuk, in fact, there are different categories of the Sukuk. One of them is the green Sukuk. So this standardization could be really properly structured on the smart contract. So the smart contract, it's eligible, or like a platform or the software will give you flexibility to standardize any form of Islamic capital market. So what happened when I did deep research, when I understood about the Sharia principles, because Sharia, they have some principle guideline to follow to give the opinion for some certain commodity or asset into the real market. So when I have understood about the infrastructure for the Sharia opinion, I come out with a standard. So the standard, when we look at the Ethereum platform, basically Ethereum has standardized the token. So when we mention about the ERC20, that's a standard. So if the ERC20 within the network communicating to any other network with the similar standard, then there will be a proper communication or engagements. So meaning to say that this smart contract talking to another smart contract within the different network. So that's a standardization. And so those experts in the Ethereum, what they come out with the platform, they call it EIP, Ethereum Improvement Protocol. In 2017, they launched it. So what happened? They are inviting the entire industry experts to participate to improve any certain protocol, which is, let's say, protocol related to the Sukuk. So that platform is open for all the Sukuk experts to participate and come out with the proper standards. And that standard can be given to the Sharia community to give an opinion about that standard, basically. And when they give an okay to go with, that will be a quite genuine application running in the consensus, which presenting the structuring of the Sukuk. That's how the smart Sukuk can operate itself. So meaning to say, so the smart contract can be, the auto form of the Sukuk contract. So that's where the conclusion of what I have already mentioned regarding the transformation from the Sukuk, Sukuk, the manual form, to the Sukuk, the digital form, using the smart contract. So this is basically what are the contribution from the blockchain technology to the smart industry. So basically, when I look at the research, and it was quite impressive, I found there are a lot of issues in the Sukuk industry. So even from the Sharia experts, they have mentioned that. So one of the things, which is there is no standard, which is a specific standard. There are different standards in the entire global Muslims world. So some Muslim countries, they follow some certain standards, and others, they follow different standards. That's one thing. The second thing, which is more into the complication in the processes. I have met a lot of experts, a lot of financial institutions. When it comes to the Sukuk issuance, there's a complicated process in place. So that's number two. There's a lot of legality, so we have to consider that one also. So there will be a lot of documentation to be taken in place and given to the legal opinion to take their opinion and then to place it finally to issue the Sukuk. And that will take a really long time. So here, what I am saying, why don't you transform the entire procedure is in a way automating it? So the automation will come into the in the form of like every single rule like to be insert into the smart contract. So that's the automation of the legality. So that's a compliant automations, and that automation that will give the flexibility to the entire Sukuk experts to easily interact with the Sukuk, because whatever they have it in the previous structuring, it is already automated. And anything new they can build in within the security token or within the smart contract.
Can you walk us through, let's say, the whole process of constructing a green Sukuk, going from issuance to like distribution, post trade? How do you transfer ownership of the certificate, and also like the use of proceeds, kind of the overall end-to-end process of how that might work on blockchain?
Yeah. So basically, this is all been defined within the smart contract, because smart contract is all about the functionalities. So whenever we put the functionalities and set up the functionality in the smart contract, that will define for you who are the participants. That's number one. Number two, the ownership of any single assets, because we have to identify every single asset which is representing a value of some certain value of a specific capital. So that will be all defined in the smart contract. And when there will be a communication between like the consensus or the network that are participating using a certain platform representing smart Sukuk, there will be definitely identification, because we know, and Dr. knows, we have an application or identity application on the blockchain. So that will be already initiated whenever people are participating within the network. So the initiationist will be there. As said, will be defined. That will be recorded as well. And entirely, when we talk about the token, I'm coming back to the earlier opinion. Even I published an article. Why don't we issue a Sukuk security token? So if we have a Sukuk security token representing the entire capital or Islamic capital market, and that will be in the form of a Sukuk, automated Sukuk. All right. So that token, which is already is a smart contract, the entire structuring of the Sukuk should be integrated into that smart contract, and the automation of the rules and the processes should be integrated as well. So that's how the technical part of it, when we make a transformation. So meaning to say that we need to have a security token in the place representing Sukuk industry. We need that definitely whenever we mention a security token is a smart contract, and that's based on the technology, which is the blockchain technology.
Thanks. Where do you see the most value coming from by issuing a tokenized Sukuk on blockchain? Is it mostly to reduce cost, operational cost, or the ability to kind of reach more investor base?
Indeed, that's the enhancement. That's the enhancement of the business processes, like the streamlines. That's number one. We don't need to have, because even I got a feedback, it takes about 7 to 8 months to issue a Sukuk for any certain market. So that was quite shocking. But when you have a long process after 7-8 months to issue a Sukuk for a project owner, so here even the project owner will be in pain, because he is running a project and looking for the investor. He has to wait for the Sukuk to be issued after 7 months. So we need to say that we are cutting off this, and we don't need to wait for 7 months. It could be within seconds or minutes. Okay, that's one thing. So the enhancement of the streamline of the time will be cut off, And the cost as well, let's not forget, there is a cost engaged in the Sukuk issuance. So that's also another painful thing, which is the entire industry suffering with. So now here, when we are leveraging that using the blockchain technology, we are cutting down all these costs as well. And let's not forget as well, from the Sharia point of view, we need to have efficiency, because in any Islamic instruments, we need to have efficiency in place. If there is no efficiency, there will be a lot of issues happening. So this is another thing. We know that the blockchain, after looking at the attributes of the blockchain, it has one of the things which is quite efficient. And another point, which is security. We all know and we all understand that the blockchain has about capacity of the security. So the security is quite high within this technology. That's where the Islamic finance industry, they like it. They like to use such a secure platform to run any kind of the Islamic instruments, such as Sukuk or the green Sukuk. So these are the value added for the green Sukuk when we want to convert or divert it into digital form.
Thanks, Mr. Madid. One more question I have, and I also want to invite Dr. Khan to answer this. Where do you see, so in the Islamic finance context, there might be extra considerations that enterprises or companies need to have when they design a blockchain-based solution and workflow. Where do you see some of the considerations that companies need to pay attention to make sure that workflow is Sharia compliant?
Again, sorry, I need you to repeat again. Sorry about that.
Yeah, my question is just in the Islamic finance context, when companies or enterprises are looking to deploy blockchain-based solutions, what are some of the considerations they need to think about in terms of making sure the process is Sharia compliant?
Okay, that's a very interesting. To be honest with you, when it comes to any technology, when Sharia gives an opinion, the opinion you are not giving to the technology. When it comes to the technology, technology is a piece of like a code, or let's say it's a piece of a machine. If it is an artificial intelligence, if it is like a intelligent agent running in the consensus. So finally, it comes back into structuring. That's number one. Just now I mentioned, when you have a proper structuring in place, which is following the Sharia opinion. And because, in the Sharia opinion, there are some certain rules and regulation we need to follow. Let's put an example. In Sharia community, they always looking for the contract, physical contract, meaning to say that documentation should be in the place. And this documentation will be represented in between two parties for having a deal. And also there should be a physical form of asset. So these are the few things that I'm mentioning. There are so many other things. So what will happen here in the blockchain space, we're doing the same thing, because when we're representing the value of Sukuk is in a digital form. So that's what makes us a bit different than the entire digital industries, when earlier any form of digital was not representing value of asset. But in blockchain industry, yes, we do represent the value of asset within a digital form. For that, we call it a programmable token. So these are the consideration. One. Number two, I don't feel is a challenge for the Sharia to look at certain technology running some Islamic instruments in a real proper structures, following real guideline from the Sharia communities. So that's what I think about it.
Thanks, Dr. Khan.
So basically, the way I look at it is that you have to involve the Sharia scholars right from the conception stage.
Looks like streaming is not there.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. So basically, you have to involve the scholars right from the beginning. You are designing the architecture of your solution.
Ila, you hear me?
They have
sorry,
to be...
sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
So,
no, I think Dr. Nida, I'm done for answering. If you have any other questions, because Dr. Nida, I guess she's disconnected.
Oh, I can hear her. Fine.
Okay.
So basically, you need to have the scholars right from the beginning when you're designing the solution, and you have to follow an iterative process. So basically, you come up with a basic prototype, then invite the Sharia scholars again to have a look at the demo. get their points, and through this process, this iterative process, you keep on building up on the original solution till what you have at the end, which is ready to be launched in the market, is fully compliant with the Sharia. The scholars are satisfied. The entrepreneurs or the business people launching the solution are satisfied. So it has to be a kind of a team effort right from the beginning, rather than showing the end product to them and getting a kind of a approval, which is not really, inculcating the true spirit of Islamic finance into the solution. So they need to be present right from the beginning.
Got it. And by the way, for the audience, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post it under the Q&A section, and we can address those questions later. Thanks very much, Dr. Khan and Mr. Madid, for the great illustrations of how to utilize blockchain in the use cases such as impact financing and green sukuk. I think I'm particularly excited about the real world examples that you showed, especially with your company implementing the supply chain solution to prove the authenticity of halal food. That is really interesting. A few comments I have to address some of the points that both of you mentioned earlier. One, as I mentioned before, like one of the big arguments is being, public versus private permissioned blockchain. And there has been predominant narratives around, if you were a bank or enterprises, you probably should want to implement permissioned blockchain, because public blockchain, by the word public, it sounds like your information or your customer's privacy is exposed. But I would say that this is kind of a misunderstanding, and a lot of the functionalities of the public blockchain was not really fully discovered and being utilized yet. So to address your point, Dr. Khan, on privacy issue, I think for account-based blockchain systems, it is a bit too simple of a system that would have privacy issues. But for UTXO-based blockchain, such as Bitcoin blockchain, it is by nature pseudonymous, and the transactions are public, but the identity is private. And it is also possible to safeguard privacy using simple techniques like end-to-end encryption. And also we've been working with companies that are storing healthcare data on the blockchain. So those would need even more advanced techniques such as ZK snarks. So those can really be implemented on the public blockchain to address the privacy concerns. And I guess why using public blockchain, a big thing, value proposition, I think both of you touched upon, is interoperabilities, right? Right now, the data is all, stored in silos with big, company servers. So imagine a world where we have a lot of different private blockchains. In a sense, it is also kind of a replicate of the current world that we live in, with a bunch of different federated databases. So I think in that sense, public blockchain really provides us a vision to have a one global database that provides interoperabilities and a common marketplace for a global of data, and really give control to the hands of the users. So I think that's where the public blockchain really shines compared to other solutions. And throughput is also something people talk about a lot, since most of the public blockchains are really having scaling issues. And when people talk about Bitcoin, they think of, Bitcoin doesn't scale, or the Ethereum currently also doesn't scale. But with Bitcoin SV, we really take the approach that scalability is the #1 priority, because you need to have a really stable and scalable blockchain for companies to feel comfortable building upon. So this is something that we really value, and we currently is able to process, around 3,000 transactions per second, and we're looking to achieve by 50,000 transactions per second in the coming year. So just to add upon on some of the discussions that we had earlier, to provide a kind of alternative opinion on that. So let's look at some of the audience have questions. Are there analytical studies on the issue, the green sukuk? I think that goes to Mr. Madid.
Analytical issues?
Analytical studies.
See, basically, green sukuk is a very new phenomenon in the Islamic finance. So if you trace it back, it goes back in 2010 when Malaysia first time issued with a value of 1 billion green sukuk, and in 2014, I think it was the Security Commission of Malaysia. They leveraged the green sukuk industry or platform. At the same year, Dubai also make a joint venture agreement with the World Bank to issue green sukuk for developing the the environmental safety projects. So it's a very new phenomenon. It's not that old in the Islamic finance era. That's one. Number two, when we mention about green sukuk, as I mentioned, doesn't make quite much differences with the actual concept of sukuk. Is it the only new class? Is it the new class or Islamic asset class, which is like in intersection of the investment trends, which is the Islamic mature funds, and we have social responsibility investments and sukuk. That's the only thing. For that, you wouldn't be able to get much analysis in the green sukuk industry. And precisely when it comes to the implementation of the blockchain as well, I heard a couple companies from Canada, they started to do some sorts of the like smart sukuk using blockchain for the green industry. All right, so this is one thing. And just to add one more thing, when you mentioned, it was quite impressive, when we talk about the public blockchain and the private blockchain. Let's not forget, we have an algorithm, which is the consensus mechanism. The consensus mechanism needs a pool of people. So we're looking for incentives. So the incentivization comes from two things. From the attraction, how to attract the people to participate in the blockchain network by using token or the crypto. And when they are participating, they will be part of the pool of incentives, the people who are participating using the blockchain. And both of them are, from the technical perspective, they are security. For me, crypto application is a security for the blockchain, and as well as the consensus mechanism, another level of the security. So whenever we have public, the security is higher than the private, because the private will go into the minimum range of the usage. Maybe that particular private sector, they use it for just keeping some records into their private premises. But the public, it is open for the entire public. That's number one. And number two, it doesn't mean that the information is a tempered information. We all understand blockchain. It is open, yes, but we are using a very sophisticated mechanism, elliptic cryptographic mechanism, which is the hashing mechanism 256. And that's not possible to open or temper this information in the network, just for the clarification.
Thanks, Bose. I think we are just about time to wrap it up. To sum up, both Dr. Khan and Mr. Magdi provided very solid arguments about why using blockchain technology in the use case of impact finance. Blockchain technology, due to its immutability and traceability, it provides really transparent record to different parties in the overall value chain to know exactly what's going on, and there is no area for cheating. And there's also use cases such as micropayments and data capacity and self-executing logic that you can write and code into the blockchain that's triggered by conditions. So those are all great features and functionalities that potentially can, reduce the operational cost to construct a financial instrument such as Sukuk, and also apply to other impact financing and SRI projects as well. So thank you very much both, and it's been a very insightful discussion.
Thank
you. Thank you, Farhan.
And I'm gonna pass it over to Nancy.
Maybe Brother Umar is joining, so I'd like to take the opportunity to interrupt in between. We were talking about the public and the private blockchain platform. So when you talk about the Bitcoin being pseudonymous, the identity has been attacked, not just once, but couple of times. So it's very, very insecure in that context. When you talk about ZK snarks, then it suffered from an inflation bug. And all the privacy preserving platforms have basically been attacked. So when you talk about from the context of privacy, the very fact that the data is immutable on the blockchain platform renders it non-compliant to regulatory laws like, for example, GDPR, because they want that whenever the individual wants the data to be erased, for example, you have some kind of data on the blockchain platform, they don't want the data to be there. So there should be a mechanism whereby you could delete that data. But on the public blockchain, that is not possible. When you talk about the private blockchain platform, accepting the fact that, of course, the number of nodes is less, so the immutability is not so much guaranteed compared to the public one. But again, you can have an access layer built into it, enabling people to only read the data that you want them to read. So for example, if an individual in future wants to change his data, he wants his data to become private, then that can be easily built or custom built into the private blockchain platform, which is not possible in the public blockchain platform. So I give over to Brother Mansi and Umar.
Yeah, well, maybe we can take the discussion offline because it's really interesting. Yeah,
thank you so much.
And I have questions. I have answers to both of the issues that you mentioned.
Thank you so much. I think perhaps maybe Dr. Nida can answer the last question in the chat tab. There's someone saying, my questions goes to Dr. Nida. What is your advice to those from non-technical background and are interested in learning more about blockchain technology? Secondly, I came across with your good articles on the same topic. Are you interested in collaborative research? If yes, how can you be reached?
So you can approach me on my LinkedIn, and my email is also there. So just maybe search for my profile on LinkedIn and get connected.
Yeah, can you perhaps maybe type your email in the public chat so that we can reach out to you? Thank you so much. And okay.
Is there time to just quickly address to the two problems that Dr. Khan brought up earlier?
I think we are 10 minutes, Omar. I think we're 10 minutes. We have to the next showcase, right?
All right.
If you will take a few seconds, that's okay.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, it would take.
I also answer after that, Brother Umar. So.
Yeah, so maybe you can continue directly, because
just on the privacy issue, there are ways to use hierarchical key structure where the pseudonymous identity is associated with a Bitcoin transaction address that can be privately associated with a registered entity certificate that you have, whether it's a government entity or whatever. So there are ways to remain private, but also have your key associated with certain transactions, and only parties within the trade itself would have access to these information.
Okay, so how do you deal with the phenomenon of
I think I have to stop you there.
blockchain
Yeah. So I think
30 minutes is not enough. Let's take it offline.
All right. Do share the outcomes on social media.
You share your contact details. Perhaps if the audience want to reach any of you, please, Ella. I think Dr. Nida already did. Ella, you can just share your email address and for people to get in touch with you.
Yep. I will type
that would
it
be
into
great.
the chat.
All right.
The recording of the,
thank you so much, Dr. Nida. Yeah.
The
We have a
recording is going to be sent to speakers and registered attendees. We're not sure about the guests, but if you have registered for the session, you'll be getting the recording very soon.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, you guys.
So
thank you so
again.
much. Thank you, Dr. Nida, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Khan.
All right. And thank you, Mr. Farhan, who already left. So just very quickly touching on the previous session and then moving on to probably the climax of today. This issue of blockchain, or this opportunity and challenges of blockchain, I think is really fascinating. And the main thing is, alhamdulillah, there are people like the individuals we just saw who are very passionate about it and really looking at how to make it work. And inshallah, the rest of us can try to keep up to understand what's going on. But that's the thing about technology. Once you sort of crack the code, then it just becomes something that everybody uses or everybody wants to use. Yeah, so inshallah, that will bring benefits all around. We are now on to the launch segment, a series of launches of new Islamic fintechs. MashaAllah, this is, I would say, making history. So all of us here online today from all around the world, from everywhere, we are about to witness a first where we have 3 Islamic fintechs launching on the same day in 3 different continents. And alhamdulillah, today we have the founders, the CEOs, who will be sharing this with you right now. So do feel free to screenshot and share on social media. And let's now quickly pass it on to our 3 new business startups that are launching today. We have, let me see. Yeah, you can come in, Brother Usman. Are you there? All right, so I don't want to introduce them because I don't want to steal the thunder. All right, brilliant. It takes a few seconds to load, so I'll disappear now. 10 minutes for you, Mr. Usman. Wahid. Okay, I'll just stay on until it loads properly. Well, I guess the best launches is when there's suspense. So we'll all look at the mountain and wait.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, apologies. Are you guys seeing my screen by any chance?
I'm seeing some mountain range.
Ah, yes. Not my house. Give me 1 second. I will go ahead and start, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay. Let me know when it pops up and I'll begin. Are you not seeing it, Omar? Hello?
Hello? It was there just now.
Ah, sorry. I guess I can't hear you when I'm talking. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's okay. We saw it just now. Yes, it's back up now.
Okay. Bismillah. Let me get started. First of all, thank you all very much for taking the time to listen to me and for joining the conference. My name is Usman Wahid. Simply put, I'm a brown guy with a beard. Introduction is really not that important. I'd like to kind of focus this particular session on, you can say, the theoretical framework in and around Islamic fintech. some things to take into consideration is that I'm in Dallas, Texas. So here in North America, the actual Islamic finance or fintech scene, so to speak, is still very early on. It's not nearly as progressed as the Middle East and the parts of the world that you're all from. So what I'd like to do is really kind of talk about the primary ingredients and the things in and around Islamic finance and fintech happening here in the States. Both ingredients that are missing and that are actually inherent about within Islamic finance. I myself have started a company recently, and we're about to launch, inshallah, next month. Islamic crowdfunding, ethical agreements, very similar to what our brother Munshi is doing here in the States. So while you're all very familiar with the space, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the ethics and morality around it. I think one of the things I'd like to kind of preface this whole discussion in and around is there's a lot of talk by social media influencers and people online kind of addressing what Islamic finance looked like in the past, at least here in the States. And one of the questions I get very often from a lot of people is, are Islamic mortgages by traditional Islamic banks here haram? Or, you know, how are they actually halal if they're using Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and things along those lines? I think there's a real problem with the manner in which you ask a question, and I think context is very important before we even start to begin talking about building out Islamic fintech companies. I think that particular question is actually, it's just not the right question to ask. There's a thing I call the peacock effect, right? You've got all these social media influencers coming online and trying to respond as if they're muftis or sheikhs with very limited knowledge as to what the framework or the government's framework anyway here in the States look like. Historically, it was very difficult to build out anything that was Islamic in nature here in the States. Over time, what they did was the banks and the traditional institutions that are here built what they could to the best of their ability with the tools that they had. Granted, a lot has changed in the last 5-6 years or so with the advent of crowdfunding and fintech companies. There's a lot more opportunity for us to kind of get more involved and offer more access to Islamic finance here in the States. So one of the things, again, going forward, I feel it's very, very important to kind of think outside the box when discussing Islamic fintech. Wanted to kind of get into the definitions of the various words around what we're discussing, istiqama, fintech, and kind of define how I see these things. Istiqama, very simply put, it's to follow the deen correctly. It's to be steadfast in what it is that has been prescribed to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do it no matter what the cost. You know, it's easier said than done, right? We live in a world of debt, and I'm not happy to say that the country that I represent is the largest debt holder. We like to be number one in everything. Unfortunately, this is one place I'm not too happy to say that we are number one in. When you live in an institution or in a world that's completely dominated by debt and usury, it's very difficult to kind of step out the limelight and build something of your own, or at least it was anyway. And you know, we all know the ayah in the Quran, I believe, that states very specifically, "Oh, you believe, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give up what remains due to you of interest, if you should be believers, and if you do not, then be informed of war against you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam." It's a lost battle, right? I mean, I think there's only very few, if not just several instances, or maybe even 2 instances in the whole Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks this angrily about something in the sense of it is disastrous for humanity. So if we live in a world that is essentially built around a system that is very usurious and built around interest, how do we go about creating inclusivity, right? So let's talk a little bit about inclusion or financial inclusion. The idea itself is very simple. It's giving everybody the opportunity or access to affordable and accessible financial services, such as payment engines, remittances, credit insurance, investments, and so on. That's the overall definition. But the unfortunate fact of the matter is that 1/3 of the world's population has very limited access to these services. So that inherently creates, inexclusivity, so to speak. You know, it's not for everybody, unfortunately, and that creates lots of inherent problems within society and communities across the globe. So I guess in order to, getting into Islamic finance, we should understand what halal is. Halal it's a lot of things, right? It's essentially at the end of the day a lifestyle. But in the context of Islamic finance or fintech we should kind of understand what the overall idea of Islamic or halal investing is. The premise of halal investing really is you can say profit sharing, the elimination of riba or usury, prohibition of gambling and speculation. There's a lot of beauty to all that is here. At the heart of Islamic or halal finance is a genuine philanthropic spirit that has a potential to kind of uplift humanity or millions of people around the world. And there are immediate results that you get out of practicing this with the right intention, of course. One is the elimination of economic exploitation. Omar, you might actually recognize this. I've taken this from your website. Interest-based transactions allow the lender to generate a fixed rate of return effortlessly without expending any effort, resource, or time. So here in the States, and like everywhere else in the world, obviously, there's venture capital, and we all understand how that works. At the end of the day, VC is very different in the sense where they offer money and generally offer a little bit of service around the money as well. You know what? Didn't even realize it's already 6 minutes. I'm going to kind of run through the next 2 or 3 slides to try and get to my next point. Additionally, the advent of Islamic finance, if used properly, also eliminates increasing indebtedness, which is very, very important because it's this nature that creates kind of the slave mentality in which people are continuously increasing in debt, and it makes it more and more difficult for them to do anything outside of just repaying that debt. In Islam, there's really no room for this. Because there's an inherent understanding that people need to work together, be very transparent, and kind of manage and take care of the money in a manner that's different than what we practice here in the States. Wealth inequality, obviously there's a disparity between the rich and the poor, and it gets wider and wider as time goes by because the systems themselves haven't changed. And I see and I have always seen Islamic finance, at least for the last 2 or 3 years since I've gotten accustomed to it, as a very obvious and commonsensical kind of solution for this. I came across this ayah about several years ago. It kind of changed everything for me. It is the longest ayah in the Quran, which is actually really interesting. It doesn't talk about the Prophet of Islam. It doesn't talk about the pillars of Islam. Instead, it lays out a very, one can say simple process of transparency and trust in which you put together an agreement that you can build a whole nation on. You can build a legal system on top of just this one ayah. There's a lot of beauty in understanding that the premise or the foundation of what we all talk about, blockchain, fintech, and all that stuff can literally be found in this one ayah. And I won't go into depth into talking about this, but just as a place or a point of reference, a lot of what I have done in the last several years has been in and around the idea that the longest ayah in the Quran talks specifically to me as an entrepreneur and as somebody that has had a lot of, you can call them experiences or failures in my life simply because I didn't clearly put things down on paper. I blindly offered trust to people, and that trust was taken advantage of over and over again. And I realized it was my own fault because there was no transparency in the manner I built some businesses in the past. So there's a lot of beauty here. Finally, fintech, right? So we've talked a little bit about financial inclusivity. We talked a little bit about what halal really is and what it can eliminate. We talked about istiqamah. Let's talk about fintech itself. The idea of fintech, at the end of the day, it's just tools to improve financial products and services. Very simple. There's lots of tools that go into this particular category. Primarily, I'd say blockchain, investments, crowdfunding, and online banking. Those are probably the 4 primary categories. The question, I guess the most important thing here to understand is yesterday, and when I say yesterday, I just mean just a few years ago, it was very difficult for us to go out and leave the traditional infrastructure of banking systems and create something of our own. But today, with the advent of fintech and crowdfunding and regulatory changes across the globe, we now have an opportunity to do so. And that's something very important to keep in mind. Can Islamic fintech offer inclusivity and istiqamah? I think one of the most important things, and that you'll see here, is they're inherently hand in hand to the same thing. So inclusivity and istiqamah at the end of the day are part and parcel of Islamic finance. There's really no difference. So if done properly, that's exactly what you're doing, and that's exactly what you're offering to people. Some of the ingredients, and I think the primary things to take into consideration when starting a company, and I say this very very sincerely, because I spent way too much time trying to figure out how to go about creating an Islamic institution or a company that will serve our people, inshallah. I think the first and most important thing is really people over profit. Your intention is very important, and to start a fintech company or build something around the premise that people come first is very important. At the heart of Islamic finance, like I said earlier, is that philanthropic spirit, and that's important to take into consideration. Second is the servant mentality. All of the Sahabas of the Prophet ﷺ had one very common trait, and that was the unity in belief, right? The Tawheed. And every single one of them understood that there was one person they were answering to at the end of the day, and that was Allah. And with that, they were able to kind of unite and do things together. The underlying unifying characteristic amongst all of them, really, at the end of the day, was the belief in Allah. Transparency, if we go back to the ayah, transparency and governance, they're both defined in the longest ayah in the Quran, in respect to keeping things simple, easy for people to understand, scholarly oversight as far as Sharia advisory in every single aspect of the development of fintech companies in the Islamic space is very, very important. And we've taken all these things into consideration in our own company, Fursa, as we've been growing. If there was ever a time in my life, and as young as I look, I'm really not that young, right? If there was ever a time for change, in all honesty, with the advent of COVID, today is a time. If I can leave with just one thing, if you think about it, the world today is suffering, it's in pain, and we stand at the precipice of change. It's about time for Islamic finance and change makers to come in and change the way the institutions work and offer those secondary and alternative markets around Islamic finance. If there was any one thing that I could really leave everybody with, it's the idea to come together under the premise of this, keep our intention sincere, inshallah, and create companies and access for the majority as opposed to the minority to be able to leverage Islamic finance and what it's supposed to be. That's it. I didn't want to focus too much. I actually didn't want to talk at all, honestly, to be frank with about Fursa, about what we're doing. I want to talk more about the idea of Islamic finance and fintech in general. So I hope that gives a little bit of insight. I see I'm a couple of minutes over. So Umar, I'll give it back to you. Umar?
Can you all see me? Anybody?
Yes.
All right. I assume you can see me. All right. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Brother Usman. MashaAllah. You really shared deep things that we all need to think about. And I still want to know what Fursa is about. So inshallah, we'll wait for when you go live. Right now, we're going to jump to Kestrel. We have with us Daing Termizi, a young gentleman, inshallah.
All right,
please
thank
go
you,
ahead,
Omar.
brother.
All right, thank you, Omar. Assalamualaikum. Hi, everyone. My name is Daing, and I'm the co-founder of Kestrel. Today, I'll be talking a bit about Kestrel and announce our first product to the world. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizer for giving me the platform to introduce Kestrel. So what is Kestrel? Kestrel aims to be the leading ethical and interest-free payments and wealth management platform. Effectively, Kestrel is a debit card linked to an app that allows users to store their money securely, spend it easily, budget for the future, and grow their wealth in a manner compliant with their personal values. So why we start Kestrel? The backstory is Kestrel started when me and my co-founder Arif went away to do our MBA in Cambridge. Being the only few Muslims in the class, I firstly met Arif in the small prayer room at the business school. After a few discussions, we realized that as a Muslim, we usually have to choose between two aspects in our financial life. The trade-off is whether to bank according to our faith and sacrifice the best technology and convenience on offer, or choose the latter stack but sacrifice our faith. We believe this should not be the case, and that's the single mission that brought Kestrel to life. So what is the problem that we are actually trying to solve here? So meet our typical user, Ali. Let's name him Ali, right? Like most of us, he has life goals, and like most of us, our life goals are directly influenced by how we manage our finance, whether it's buying a house or retiring early or even buying a sports car. But we found out that most of us don't have a clear action plan on how to achieve this goal financially. Ali knows what he wants, but he does not know how to achieve this goal and when can he realistically achieve it. Castrol's goal is to help our user like Ali to achieve his goal a lot easier, less demanding on his brain. So, to grow wealth, you need to invest. To invest, you need to save first. To save, you need to take control of your budget. To budget, you need to know where your money is going. And we aim to help our user in this journey digitally, so people like Ali can achieve his goal a lot easier. So how do Castrol plan to achieve this? So we have 4 pillars that we plan to develop. Firstly is our debit card that is linked to an app to give you the latest tool to control your spending. Secondly is money management tools to help our user visualize their goals as well as budget and save easier. Thirdly is our marketplace, and this is to allow our user manage and grow their wealth. And fourth pillar is our own innovative financial product. We believe that this end-to-end solution aided by easy-to-use app will help our user to achieve their goal. Let me introduce the team behind Castrol. So Arif is our CEO and co-founder. He drew his experience in Big Four management consulting, especially in the UK digital banking and wealth tech space. So his experience is very valuable in driving Castrol forward. He's also a Cambridge MBA grad. I'm Cambridge MBA grad. I worked in Bank Negara before, Bank Negara of Malaysia, before I started my MBA and start Castrol. And Ayas is our CFO. He is a qualified ACA with over 30 years experience in regulatory aspect of financial industry. He was a former head of audit for 2 of the UK major banks. We are lucky to have Irfan joining us at Castrol. He was a former CTO at Hermo, an e-commerce platform here in Malaysia. So he has a vast experience managing large tech team. Dr. Musab is our head of data science. He's at Oxford, PhD. He brings with him valuable experience in algorithmic trading and machine learning. We believe in talent, and this is the team behind Castrol. We believe that our core competency have to be intact. We are tech company first, so we don't believe in outsourcing our tech. So as you can see, we are powered by this team of talented young Malaysian. Right. So what are we launching today? So Alhamdulillah, after months of development, we are ready to launch the first iteration of the Castrol app. It is now available in Apple App Store, with Google Play Store to come in the next 2 weeks. With this Castrol app, you will be able to consolidate all your personal accounts and manage your finance in one place. So if you have multiple accounts, you can connect all your accounts in Castrol and see all your accounts in one place. We will also help categorize your spending through our own machine learning and enable you to create and track your own budget. This is by no means the end of the road for our app development. Inshallah, in the future, we will introduce the marketplace, inshallah, in October 2020, where we'll offer third-party products like investment, energy switching, and carbon offsetting. Inshallah, in January 2021, we will launch our debit card, and in 2022, we launch our home purchase product launch. So that's it from me. Thank you. Before I leave, I'll have a video to show to you guys. Let me share the link first. I think it will like this, right? I have to add video. All right, and
hi, and welcome to Castrol's product demo video, where we'll take you through our current functionality. Castrol is an open banking-enabled budgeting tool, which means users are able to connect multiple bank accounts to the Castrol app and view their finances in one place on their activity screen. The main reason for this is to help our users with their monthly budgeting. Users are presented with an auto-generated monthly budget based on an average of their previous monthly spendings. Their transactions are broken down into different categories, where they can be viewed according to date or merchant. Users can also edit their budgets manually by each category, which will then feed directly into our algorithm. The algorithm will learn from this and updates their budgets in the future, helping Kestrel's users to stay on top of their finances every day.
Right, that's all from me. Do check us out on the Apple App Store, and all the best, everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you so much, Brother Daing, for sharing that with us. And it's really exciting. So, all right, I had a few questions, but inshallah, we will chat about it in a short while. So we are on to our last and inshallah not least presentation. Brother Mansi, you have something?
Yeah, sorry. Have we seen the video of Kestrel? Because I haven't seen anything. And I don't think the audience...
I saw the whole thing. Can we check with the audience? Can you please reply in the chat? Do you hear the video? Yeah, I saw the video.
Okay,
I think you have to click on the button.
Maybe Brother Daing can share the video on the chat tab. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, link to the YouTube or anywhere your website. All right, brilliant. Thank you. You did? Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, so here we are with the final product launch, and I can talk a lot about this, but I will not. Alhamdulillah, part of the artist group, after a lot of effort and time, we have with us our CEO, Brother Shehzad, or everybody calls him Zad. Zad, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum everyone, and good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you, Brother Umar, and yeah, congratulations to Daing as well as Brother Usman for the earlier presentation. Let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, is my screen on? Can I confirm that my screen is on? Hello?
Yeah, it's still loading on my side.
Okay. Yeah, once it's up, just give me a tinkle. So, mashallah, we've had a very interesting Islamic Fintech week. I hope, the audience have benefited greatly. A lot of insights, a lot of knowledge has been shared. Yeah, it's and I think everyone can agree that it's a very robust and dynamic situation that we have with Islamic Fintech right now. Alhamdulillah for that. Is my screen on?
I know it's not on yet. You want to try again? Maybe I'll stop your screen share, then you just try again.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. So I just stopped you, and you can try again. Okay, now it's loading. And we can see your screen. I can see your screen. I hope the rest can see.
Can you see the first page of the slide?
Yes. So in the US, we can see. In Kuala Lumpur, we can see.
Okay.
So inshallah, everybody can see.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And hopefully soon enough, once Elon gets to Mars, we can see it from there as well. Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. Just to recap, so we've had 2 exciting launches. So today, Alhamdulillah, I'm representing Atis Malaysia as part of Atis Global. My name is Muhammad Shehzad. Let me just quickly walk you through into what we have in store for Atis Malaysia. So our mission and vision is aligned with that of our parent, which is to drive effective and impactful circulation of capital in the real economy. And this is what we believe the essence of Islamic finance, which is participatory financing or participatory investment. And the overall aim is to uplift humanity through the use of financial technology. Atis Malaysia is a fully Sharia compliant equity crowdfunding platform. Essentially, we operate like a digital stock exchange in the sense that we help companies issue shares, whether ordinary or preference shares. And this is basically done on our platform. Subsequently, we are also looking into enabling the trading of those shares. We are part of Atis Group of investment, financing, and charity digital platforms. So for Atis Malaysia, we are approved under Securities Commission Malaysia by the RMO section as well as Islamic Capital Market. It was a rigorous process that we have to follow to get to this point. So we are launching Atis Malaysia with the agriculture and business verticals, followed subsequently by the property and wakaf verticals. We have partnerships in place, and we are curating deal flow or investment campaigns in these verticals and a few other verticals. Just quickly to run through what is allowed under the guideline. So we can only work with companies which are incorporated in Malaysia. This could be private limited or limited liability partnership companies. So this information would be useful for those joining us from Malaysia and own Malaysian companies. We welcome you to raise funding on our platform. Similar to an initial public offering or IPO on stock markets, some of you might be aware, one of the documents that needs to be submitted during an IPO process is called an information memorandum or prospectus. So we do have something similar that the issuer has to share with the investors. So we help the issuer to basically look through this information that they are subsequently going to share with the investors. So there's some due diligence that we have to undertake under the Securities Commission requirement. In terms of funding amount, startup, so a tech startup like Kestrel, for example, they've got a lot of Malaysians with them. If they have a Malaysian entity that wants to raise in Malaysia, then the funding limit is $500,000. But once they have audited financials with them, then the limit is RM, Ringgit Malaysia 10 million, which is about 2.5 million US dollars, thereabout. And this 10 million or 2.5 million US dollar funding amount is a lifetime limit. As mentioned, we are also looking at having secondary market trading. For investors, there's no limitation in terms of the nationality of the investor. So the investor can come from anywhere. And in fact, our base of investors are fairly global. So they come from about 59 countries till date. We work with basically 3 categories of investors as defined under the Malaysian SC guideline. We have the accredited / sophisticated investors that does not have any restriction. This is basically the highest tier. And then you have the angel investors who can invest up to 500,000 within a 12 months period. And by default, all of us, unless we fall under the angel or sophisticated category, and we have to basically have documents for that, by default, we will fall under the retail investor. So the retail investors, there's a slightly lower limit in terms of investment amounts that they are allowed. This is basically part of the risk function that SC Malaysia has introduced. So in terms of verticals, we are excited to work with a number of good Malaysian companies. We are particularly interested to work with companies that can offer definable social impact. This is in line with what we have been doing in Indonesia. It's part of our DNA. Another key area that we want to move into very strongly is agriculture. So during and post, now that we are reaching what I would call as the post-COVID-19 period, I think there's a lot of realization of the importance of food security. Alhamdulillah, we have actually been looking at this sector even prior to COVID-19. So we intend to do funding at a farm cluster level, and we also intend to provide investments to fund the larger producers for the purposes of export and trading. Property and Wakaf assets are the next two verticals that we will move into at a slightly later stage. So for property, continuing with what we have been doing in Indonesia, we would like to offer our investors access to development opportunities in Malaysia so that they can earn developer-like returns. Yeah? At some point, we also would like to look into discounted purchase of income-generating assets. Yeah? For Wakaf assets, I think it's a topic that has been discussed at length, not just during IFW, but also I think in general under Islamic finance. There's a lot of interest to actually monetize dormant Wakaf assets. So this is something that we are trying to do as well. What we hope to do is finally create a virtuous cycle of returns and impact. Yeah. So cash Wakaf is also something that we are exploring. This is a snapshot of our overall ecosystem. So we have our global crowd of investors, individuals, retail investors, as well as high net worth individuals, and also institutions and governments on one side. So as a marketplace, we have two sides of the equation that we're trying to balance, the investors as well as the issuers. Yeah. So for the issuers in 2020, we are looking at pushing SMEs campaigns as well as agriculture. And next year, inshallah, we're looking at funding more property and Wakaf while continuing with SMEs and agriculture. Yeah. At some point forward, like I said, we will operate just like a digital stock exchange in that we offer issuances as well as secondary trading. We are also looking at partnering with institutions such as fund managers and banks, and I will touch a bit more on this later on. So our positioning is basically ethical and participatory investment or financing, and we are bounded by the two pillars of sustainable projects as well as impact projects. So sustainable projects here, we define it under the UN SDGs. There are 17 sustainable development goals that we try to basically touch on either at a group or rather at the cluster level or individual SDGs. And we also try to basically have defined impact under those SDGs. Yeah. So this is only possible if the campaigns or the projects that we introduce to our investors are economically sustainable. That means they get the right returns as what they are promised. Yeah. And overarching or rather the umbrella under which all of this sits are the Sharia principles or the Islamic values. So this defines our positioning. How do we intend to basically do what we set out to do? So deal flow is very important. So we have one side of the equation, which is deal flow coming from the issuers that wants to raise funding. And we are looking at working with ecosystem players and some other partners. Our base of investors have been global almost from day one. So we are looking at expanding this further, but also building up on the number of our Malaysian investors. I'd like to just basically focus a bit more on this at this private investment circle, which is a by invitation group of significant investors that we have started. So please do inquire with us about joining EPIC. I've mentioned a few times that we prefer to have impact projects. So we are looking at impact measurement and scoring. We're trying to develop this in-house in collaboration with some agencies as well as institutions. So this is something that hopefully we can come up with quite soon when our new platform is up and running. We love to participate in government initiatives. This is again a continuing trend from our Indonesia sister platform. So in Indonesia, our social housing project is part of the National Housing Program. And recently we funded an Islamic boarding school project, which is supported under the National Islamic Economy Committee. Yeah. One last strategy that we adopt is basically having funnels to create channels where we can have SMEs, startups grow, whether through microfinance programs or through startup incubation and investment, or even growth stage SME through industry-specific SME development. mindful of the time limit that I've been given. So in terms of our Sharia oversight, ISRA Consulting, which is a consulting arm set up by Bank Negara, the Central Bank of Malaysia, is our Sharia advisor. Our legal advisor is a company that's quite well established in Malaysia called Sukuk and Board. In terms of our senior advisors, Datuk Muhammad Razif Yunus, we're very fortunate to have him on board with us, sharing his wisdom and guidance. He is a known corporate leader in Malaysia with about 30 years of track record. He's known as a transformation leader, above other things. He was basically, his last posting was as the group MD of SME Bank. But he has experience across different sectors, including healthcare and education. Yeah? Next, we have Brother Rizwan, who is also the current president of Fintech Malaysia. Again, we are fortunate to have his counsel. We consider him to be a compliance and regulatory expert. That's where, in fact, he started his career from. But he has since moved on to become a highly successful entrepreneur. Brother Zahid Yaakob is head of our investment committee. He was the founding CEO of Waris, which is essentially the endowment or Wakaf arm of the Singapore Islamic Religious Council. So basically, anything property related, he is our go-to guy. And we also have on board with us a number of other notable, recognizable Islamic finance personality, including Mr. Daud Bakery and Dr. Shamsia, as well as Brother Rihan Nur Patan. Our group structure, this is where we are at this Malaysia. So we sit under a holding company. We have Indonesia, a branch there. We also have a charity crowdfunding platform called Global Sedekah, and we are exploring expansion into the different regions are highlighted here. In terms of what we have done thus far, I think this slide says it very succinctly. So we have crowdfunded about close to 1,300 investments, which has, alhamdulillah, managed to provide housing to about 37,000 people or about 10,000 families. And this funding that we have facilitated came from investors originating from about 59 countries. So we are looking at expanding this base of investors even further. So Ethis is about ethical crowdfunding. We hope that together with investors, investors can enjoy making a profit with us, but at the same time making a proper difference. Yeah, I think that was aligned to what our earlier presenters, Brother Usman, as well mentioned, and what Brother Daing is trying to set out to do as well. Yeah, so we are all aligned in trying to make a difference. Okay, I think I will end here. This is just basically a recent award that we have won in 2019. So this was basically from our sister company Ethis Indonesia. Thank you, Brother Umar. Do I have time to go on? I have more slides that I can share if you can afford me the time.
We can take a few minutes. That's okay, but not too long.
Okay.
Share again?
Yeah, but essentially these are just media slides. So I think, never mind. I think it's okay. We can,
Great. Thank you so much, Mohammed, and congratulations, Ethis Malaysia, for having the regulator's approval in Malaysia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You all the best and success.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
So as we come to the end, thank you so much, Brother Muhammad Jahzad. As we come to the end, I'd like to basically introduce a maximum of 4 to 5 of our current attendees to join us live right now to basically give, share their thoughts and give their feedback, and also give us their impression about the 1 week long that you have attended and the sessions that you have you've listened to. We kindly request you to raise your hand so we can give you an admin, or sorry, we can give you a presenter access right now. If you want to raise your hand, please ensure you have good internet.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while to load.
Yeah. So who's here?
Then suddenly there'll be. Do you have any hands raised? I can see. Not yet.
Ethis, Muhammad al-Sukari is asking, Ethis is not a government company. It's a private company owned by entrepreneurs, I believe.
So the webinar will end.
Right.
Don't end the webinar. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's private. Ethis is a private company. Yes.
So who's raising his hand? Do you see anyone raising his hand?
All right. Well, we wait for. No. Well, we wait for the hands to be raised, and inshallah there'll be a few coming out. Usually it takes a bit of time. So maybe I just wanted to share quickly with all of you here in the little time that we have left for this Islamic Fintech Week, the conference segment. Now, I mean, that's the end. Right? Things work so fast. Things move so fast. But it's not the end. It's actually the beginning. Inshallah, as you just saw, 3 new companies are out right now. Inshallah, trying to make a difference in Islamic Fintech. So this week, what we've tried to do is to try to have a combination of engagement, education, inspiration, a little bit of controversy maybe with debates, and alhamdulillah also to make things real, to get things to be actualized. When you speak about theory, it's great, but my experience for a long time, there's a lot of theory already in Islamic finance, and now we need to implement this theory to effect the change that we want to see. So inshallah, with all of our support, and as I said, I truly believe this is a start, this is a beginning, and we have to find ways to keep communicating, interacting, pulling the community, enlarging the community, and empowering the community, inshallah. There's just a few things I wanted to share, but we also want to hear from you. So if any of you want to say anything, please raise your hands. I don't see any hands raised yet. Are there hands raised?
No, I see from Ali Zian. We gave
All right.
him already access. I think we already gave him access, but I'm not sure why he's not in yet. Brother Ali, if you can just turn on your mic and camera, please. And there is Jahan Zib Khan. Jahan Zib Khan would like to ask a question, please.
Oh, sure.
So the only one who raised his hand is Ali Zian. Nobody else? Muhammad Jeddah. Okay. Muhammad Jeddah from SunTrust Bank, Nigeria.
Yeah, the thing about the software is you need to be connected to strong internet or cable, direct to the LAN cable, then it works better.
Okay. Brother Muhammad, you're in. Please turn on your cam and mic. Yes, please turn on your mic. I'm not sure what's wrong. Do you see anyone who's Omar? Can you just check? I think we have.
Yeah, you can type anything you want. I think that's okay, because it seems that getting online is tough.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So what we'll do, maybe we can take a few minutes to get some questions out and some answers, inshallah, some discussions.
Yeah, we want to wrap up quickly. Less than 5 minutes, we need to end this webinar. I really personally want to thank everyone who joined. This week has been really hectic, and you know, from the back end side has been really hectic, but from the front end side was really insightful and full of knowledge sharing and really good feedback and information with regards to different areas and different segments. The audience have been really engaging and committed to come 2 sessions in a day in different timings. So thank you so much for that. And I want to really thank our speakers for believing in the concept and for trying to join us and, you know, towards contributing to the development of halal digital economy, be it Islamic fintech or any other platform or any other sector. So guest 80 says, thank you so much, guest 80, but it would have been great if you introduce your name. We only see guest 80. Jahans Khan is asking, how does the country regulations affect Islamic fintech products across various countries? I think we've discussed this, question in many in the previous panels. But I think if you want to take this, Omar, please take over. Thank you, Zian.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Jahanza, for the question. I think the question is quite technical, and maybe now we want to focus more on broader things or more fundamental things. Since we are wrapping up, inshallah, we'll be happy to answer your question separately about KYC. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brother Mansi. As Brother Mansi pointed out just now, behind the scenes, it has really been very, very hectic. MashaAllah, I want to quickly thank the team that's been working tirelessly over the past few weeks. And MashaAllah, somehow with all of your participation, this came together and it worked out successfully for the first time. Alhamdulillah, we really have to be very, very thankful for that. And we had a few thousand, 2,000 plus people who registered for this event and turned up, and speakers from 50, 60, almost 60 speakers, I think, from around the world. So really,
60,
mashallah, we hope that
68 plus.
68. Oh, mashallah, I lost count. Yeah. So Mansi is the man with
working to trying to accommodate different time zones. It's really very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So
alhamdulillah, I want to thank the team. I want to thank you, Omar, and your team, Ethis Ventures, for facilitating this. It's interesting that we as Elmangos, we used to do events like physically. We have to travel and go to Malaysia and meet different stakeholders face to face. And this time, due to COVID-19, we had to do everything remotely. It's a bit frustrating, with physical events. You really get things, if you have any last minute changes or challenges, you get to meet people and talk to them and try to fix things quickly. But with with online events, it's very difficult to change anything, because it's you can't change internet speed, right? So you just have to accept it, and it is what it is. And yeah, thank you so much. I want to thank the team. I want to thank everyone. We have so far have had over 2,000, so around 2,380 registrants from different parts of the world. It really gives me immense pleasure to connect with all of you. And I think the way forward, moving forward, is that we have to continue, and we have to keep up the momentum and follow up follow up on these discussions that we have had for the past 4 days. If we can have some sort of a LinkedIn group, or like a LinkedIn group that where we can connect together discuss, challenges, ask questions, and connect with just, bright minds and like-minded entrepreneurs, like-minded people within this area. That would be great. I think maybe we can create a LinkedIn group. Currently, we have something called Islamic Digital Economy Group on LinkedIn. I think you can just go, just go to LinkedIn and type Islamic Digital Economy, and you will see this group currently exists. You can just ask or request to join, and we will give you access, and hopefully we can continue the conversations and discussions there. Thank you so much, Brother Awais Patni. Muhammad Jidda has been really a supporter from day one. Thank you, Kamalu Kabiro, Jahans Khan. Like, it's just amazing to really talk to all of you, and behind the screen, where we don't get to see you face to face. Awais Patni, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to hear your feedback and comments. Damisa Kazim, pleasure to hear from you, brother. And just thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone for joining, and hope we can continue this. We can keep up with the momentum, inshallah, for the next edition of Islamic Fintech Week or the Global Islamic Fintech Summit, inshallah. With that, I end. May Allah bless you all. May Allah ease all our affairs, and hopefully, inshallah, this is not the end, but the start of many good initiatives to come, inshallah. So, jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.